Bears on the flight. Let me go tune in to Keek on the mic. He gon' make sure we get our news and highlights. When you get on YouTube, you better hit the like.
Hey, what's going on, Bears fans? Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Keek on the Mic, the podcast all about the Chicago Bears. As always, if you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button and the notification to catch all Bears content right here on the podcast. First and foremost, Bears fans, I hope you guys are having a very good day. Ryan Poles and the Chicago Bears have been very busy the last couple of days trying to get their 53-man roster, and they have finally reached that initial list prior to today's 4 p.m. Eastern deadline. And now the initial roster is officially set. Doesn't mean it's going to be the same players in a couple of days as they, possibly claim other players off waivers from different NFL teams, or maybe some trades that can be on the horizon for the Chicago Bears. But before we do our initial reaction to the Chicago Bears 53-man roster, there's a couple of quick little updates I want to share with you guys on today's episode of Keek on the Mic. First and foremost, we did hear from head coach Ben Johnson prior to today's practice, and someone asked him about the status of the left tackle competition, and he said it very bluntly, like, hey, there will be someone out there in week one. We will have a starting left tackle. He's like, I'm not going to say any names at this moment, but we will make our decision very soon. And initially going into training camp and in the offseason, this was an open competition, and the Chicago Bears were trying to make this decision as soon as possible. Obviously, that has not gone as planned for Ben Johnson and the Chicago Bears. It seems at this moment that Braxton Jones will possibly be the starting left tackle for that week one matchup against the Minnesota Vikings on Monday Night Football. But we still do not know. But I do like the fact that Ben Johnson is staying very blunt about it, just being honest and transparent with Chicago Bears media and Chicago Bears fans. Yes, it is very unfortunate that they do not have a starting left tackle quite yet, or they can't name one at the moment. That's obviously not the best of news, but you still have to be able to trust Dan Rashard, Ben Johnson, to make the best decision possible, not only for the Chicago Bears, but the best decision possible for Caleb Williams and the Chicago Bears offense as well. So I'm just going to continue to put all my trust in Ben Johnson. But if I had to take a wild guess, I do think Braxton Jones will be named the starting left tackle for the Chicago Bears for that week one matchup against the Minnesota Vikings. Now moving on to some more positive news for the Chicago Bears, that Ben Johnson and Ryan Poles said that Jalen Johnson has been taken off the NFI list, where he was been on for the duration of training camp. And now he is on the active 53-man roster with no injury destination. He did practice a little bit today, just did some jogging and some certain individual drills to get himself ramped up. They're still saying the goal is that Jalen Johnson should be hopefully ready for that week one matchup against the Minnesota Vikings. I do know that we definitely need him. I know that's been an area that's kind of been on the injury front, talking about the cornerback room for the Chicago Bears during the duration of preseason and training camp. So it's really good news that Jalen Johnson is starting to get back out there on the practice field, and obviously their goal is for him to get back out there prior to that week one matchup against the Minnesota Vikings. And not so positive news, Bears fan, Ryan Poles made it very clear that newly drafted cornerback Zaw Frazier will be out for the season and will be put on the NFI list just due to some personal issues that occurred prior to joining the Chicago Bears. Ryan Poles made it very clear that he will still be in meeting with the medical staff. He will still be fully engaged, but due to some personal reasons off the field, he will be out for the season. So here we go, Bears fans. We're going to go through each position groups, and I'm going to let you guys know who actually made the initial 53-man roster. The biggest cuts for the Chicago Bears were definitely wide receiver Tyler Scott and defensive tackle Zach Pickens. They were both drafted in the 2023 NFL draft by Ryan Poles and the Chicago Bears, which does mean that Ja'Day Walker, the undrafted free agent from Texas A&M, actually made the initial 53-man roster, and we'll talk about that here shortly on today's episode of Keek on the Mic. But other than that, it was very routine for the Chicago Bears. You kind of had an idea who was going to make this 53-man roster. There was a couple of surprises here and there. But overall, I don't think there's any huge surprises on who actually made this initial 53-man roster. First and foremost, the Chicago Bears, and Ben Johnson said this morning, that they opted to keep 3 quarterbacks on this initial 53-man roster, which I have no problem with whatsoever. You have Caleb Williams, Tyson Bagent as the clear quarterback 2, and then Case Keenum. And I was actually talking to my dad as of today about Case Keenum. I said, you know what? I think, Caleb Williams and Tyson Bagent are clear quarterback 1 and 2. And Case Keenum is just really there as a mentor, a vested veteran, a guy that can just be an extra sounding board for not only Caleb Williams, but Tyson Bagent as well. So I think these are 3 solid quarterbacks in the quarterback room for the Chicago Bears, so no surprises here. Then the Chicago Bears kept 3 running backs on their roster, their initial 53-man roster, with DeAndre Swift being the clear running back 1, Kyle Monangai, and then Roschon Johnson. So I do know that Kyle Monangai and Roschon Johnson are still hurt for the Chicago Bears. Literally the day at practice, DeAndre Swift was the only running back out there. The trainers were literally taking snaps from the quarterbacks when they were doing handoff drills, right? So that's obviously not good news. Ben Johnson and Ryan Poles said they're still going through that. Hopefully these guys are available. I do expect that if these injuries are significant, that Ryan Poles and the Chicago Bears will be out on the waiver wire market or maybe possibly via trade to try to add another running back. A guy that kind of is on the top of my mind is Audric Estime. I'm a guy that was waived by the Denver Broncos, the former Notre Dame alum that is just out there. He's kind of similar to the running style of Kyle Monangai and Roschon Johnson as well. I think this is a guy that can clearly be a running back 2 behind DeAndre Swift while Kyle Monangai and Roschon Johnson are recovering from their injuries. But this is definitely going to be an area of need because, once again, DeAndre Swift was the only running back at practice as of today. But once again, no surprises about the 3 running backs that Ben Johnson, Ryan Poles, and the Chicago Bears decided to keep on their initial 53-man roster. Now moving on to the wide receiver room, the Bears kept 6 wide receivers, and obviously the exciting news for Bears fans, and he's quickly become a fan favorite, was the undrafted free agent wide receiver from Texas A&M that made quite the impression, not only on his coaches, but his teammates as well. And that is Ja'Day Walker. He has made the initial 53-man roster for the Chicago Bears. Beating out a guy like wide receiver Tyler Scott is big time. He made play after play after play, not only on offense, but special teams as well. Really happy for the kid. I know this is just the initial. There's still possibly an opportunity that he could not make the final 53-man roster as we go to that week 1 matchup against the Minnesota Vikings. But I'm definitely rooting for that kid. Just like Declan Doyle said, Bears offensive coordinator, he said he comes in and practices really hard and he practices with the purpose. So I'm definitely a big fan of Ja'Day Walker. And then everyone else was expected. DJ Moore, Roma Dunze, OZ, Luther Burden, and Devin Duvernay. There is a guy that was just released by the Green Bay Packers by the name of Mecole Hardman. I'm a guy that Ryan Poles has a lot of familiarity with. Obviously, he would be a big option in terms of a punt returner, special teams guy, maybe a guy that can possibly replace a guy like Devin Duvernay. I'm not sure how they feel about Devin Duvernay, but once again, Ryan Poles does have connections with a guy like Mecole Hardman that's now on the waiver wire. But any other than that, no big surprises in the Bears wide receiver room. Now moving into the tight end room. Once again, no surprises here, led by Cole Kmet and Colston Loveland. That's going to be your big 1-2 duo. Really excited to see what Colston Loveland does in this Ben Johnson offense in his year 1 in Chicago. And then Cole Kmet, the vested veteran, really excited to see his upside now that Ben Johnson is calling the plays as well. Once again, no surprises here in the tight end room. Now, going to the offensive linemen, the big boys, the Bears on their initial 53-man roster decided to keep 10 offensive linemen, headlined by Braxton Jones, Joe Tooney, Drew Dahlman, Jonah Jackson, Darnell Wright, Audrey Trapillo, Ryan Bates, Luke Newman, Theo Benedict, and Karan Amagaji. The thing to note here, Bears fans, is that Ryan Poles very clearly said that Karan Amagaji is now taking snaps at guard. So he's going to add depth at guard. And then, of course, he has some experience at tackle as well. And once again, the big thing here is who is going to be the starting left tackle. At this moment, it seems like it's between Braxton Jones and I believe Theo Benedict. I'm not sure if Audrey Trapillo is still in that race. But like I said, I think at the end of the day, Ben Johnson and the Chicago Bears are probably going to opt to go with Braxton Jones. But once again, no surprise here. This is a unit that, Ryan Poles and the Bears during the offseason really upgraded and bolstered in many different areas. Caleb Williams should have much better protection going into year 2 as Chicago Bears franchise quarterback. Now looking at the defensive linemen that Ryan Poles and the Chicago Bears kept on their initial 53-man roster, headlined by Montez Sweat, Dayo Dangbo, Grady Jarrett, and Jervon Dexter. As you guys can see, Andrew Billings also made the 53-man roster along with Chris Williams and Dominique Robinson. So this is, to me, probably the weakest position group on the Chicago Bears roster at the moment. I do keep hearing rumors. Kind of going around social media. The Chicago Bears are searching heavy, not only in the waiver wire, but possibly trading for another defensive end. Of course, been talking about Sadarius Smith, and I know there's been a lot of insiders saying that the Bears could have interest there as well, but they're not sure if Sadarius Smith has interest in the Chicago Bears. So once again, do not quote me on that. It's just rumors at this point, but I do think this is the area of need for the Chicago Bears, along with the running back position. The Chicago Bears need to add at least one more edge rusher to their roster prior to the week 1 matchup against the Minnesota Vikings. Once again, I am not saying to go out there and trade for Micah Parsons. I know Ryan Poles may be a little bit uncomfortable giving up away all those draft capital and having to pay him, making him one of the highest paid edge rushers in the National Football League. But I think Sadarius Smith would be a huge addition to the Chicago Bears defensive line. I think a surprise cut for the Bears in regard to the defensive line, which makes me think they are trying to find another one, is when they released Tanoh Kpassagnon. That was a guy that Dennis Allen brought in. I thought that was going to be a guy that would actually make the initial 53-man roster, but the Chicago Bears waived him today. So I think that shows you that they are trying to find an upgrade here. I know that Montez Sweat, Dayo Dangbo are going to be the big 1-2 punch, but as we talked about prior right here on the podcast, we just didn't see a lot of production in preseason. And once again, you got to take preseason with a grain of salt. Just because you didn't see constant production or pressure in preseason doesn't mean it's going to translate that way in the regular season. But Dayo Dangbo hasn't really done anything, especially that the big contract that Ryan Poles and the Bears gave him with that $48 million hasn't really instilled a lot of confidence in Bears fans. And that makes you believe that we can go into the season with just Montez Sweat and Dayo Dangbo. And obviously the injury to Austin Booker kind of put a damper to thing because he was having a really excellent preseason for the Chicago Bears defensive line. So I think Ryan Poles by the end of this and the Bears will at least add one more guy when they solidify this final 53-man roster. But I do personally think as a Bears fan, this is a huge weak link on the Chicago Bears roster. Now moving to the linebacker room, Bears fans, TJ Edwards, Tremaine Edmonds, Noah Sewell, Ruben Hippolyte, and Carl Jones Jr. Really no surprises here. I am definitely fine with how the linebacker room is going. I know that TJ Edwards was kind of banged up today in practice, left with the trainer today, so hopefully he is okay. I think that as long as this group stays healthy, I think, having the TJ Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds, I think that is one of the most underrated linebacking duos in the National Football League. Now moving on to the cornerback room, we have Jalen Johnson, Kyler Gordon, Tyreek Stevenson, Nashawn Wright, Josh Blackwell, and Nick McLeod. Just like the linebacker room, I feel like we have a really strong secondary. It just depends on injuries, and we kind of got a taste of that this preseason when Jalen Johnson and Kyler Gordon went down. Of course, Terrell Smith is out for the year, so that's very unfortunate. I think as long as this group can stay healthy, I feel like we have a also very underrated secondary in the National Football League. But overall, no surprises here. I was kind of iffy on Nashawn Wright. He showed a lot of flashes, but definitely took a step back in that preseason finale against the Kansas City Chiefs. But overall, I think as long as Jalen Johnson and Kyler Gordon and Tyreek Stevenson can stay healthy, I think this group will be fine for the upcoming season. Now moving on to the safety room, where the Chicago Bears kept 4 safeties in Kevin Byard, Jaquan Brisker, Elijah Hicks, and Jonathan Owens. I think this is a very strong room for the Chicago Bears, led by Kevin Byard and Jaquan Brisker. Really excited to see the bounce back year that we're hoping to see from Jaquan Brisker. But overall, like I've been saying about the linebacking room and the cornerback room, as long as these guys can stay healthy, we have a very solid secondary. So no surprises here of what what safeties the Chicago Bears decided to keep in their initial 53-man roster. And finally, we cannot forget about the special teamers. The Bears on their initial 53 kept Cairo Santos, Tory Taylor, and Scott Daly. So I think, I've always felt that Cairo Santos was more of the underrated kickers in the National Football League. I think he made some pretty big kicks in the preseason as well that got me excited for the upcoming season. And of course, Tory Taylor. I know a lot of people made fun of the Chicago Bears using a 4th-round pick on Taylor just a season ago, but he has been a secret weapon for the Chicago Bears and their special teams unit. Whenever you're able to flip field position, it's definitely a win, and Tory Taylor has definitely been that guy. I'm really excited to see what he does in year 2 for the Chicago Bears. So overall, Bears fans, how are you feeling about the initial 53-man roster for the Chicago Bears? Let me know down below in the comment section. Once again, the Chicago Bears, meaning Ryan Poles, they are not done creating this roster. This is just the initial roster. There's still guys are going to go pick up on the waiver wire. They could possibly make a huge trade. There's a lot of things that can still happen prior to that week 1 matchup against the Minnesota Vikings. So Bears fans, stay tuned. I will be here to deliver this news to you every step of the way. But once again, I appreciate all the love and support you guys continue to show Keek on the Mic. Make sure you do me a huge favor, but also continue to hit that subscribe button and the notification to catch all Bears content right here on the podcast. Make sure you follow me on all my social media platforms, and make sure you share this episode of Keek on the Mic with every single Bears fan that you know. But other than that, be back for all new Bears podcast right here on Keek on the Mic. Thanks, guys, and as always, bear down.
You ain't bout it, you ain't Keek on the mic. You ain't bout it, you ain't Keek on the mic. You can go and subscribe, cause I be on it right. You ain't bout it, you ain't Keek on the mic.